multi-million-dollar losses. I thought Angel Reese was the star of stars, the icon of icons.
Angel Reese arrived in the WNBA with the kind of fanfare usually reserved for blockbuster movie premieres or the return of a beloved boy band. The media painted her as a transformative figure, a player destined to elevate women's basketball to new heights. Forbes ran glowing features proclaiming her a leader in the WNBA's growth alongside veterans like Angel Wilson. Her Instagram, with its millions of followers, was a curated gallery of confidence, bold poses, Reebok endorsements, and captions that screamed, "I'm here, and I'm here." She wasn't just a rookie. She was a brand, a movement, a self-proclaimed icon ready to conquer the court and the culture. But here's the thing about hype. It's like building a skyscraper on a foundation of cotton candy. It looks impressive until the wind blows.
That's what the mainstream media keeps telling me. Headline at Forbes from last month: how Angel Reese and Angel Wilson are leading the WNBA's growth.
Reese's preseason debut with the Chicago Sky was supposed to be her coronation, a moment where she'd prove that her star power could translate from college courts and social media feeds to the professional stage. The narrative was set. Angel Reese, the LSU legend, was ready to dominate. Her team's PR machine worked overtime, churning out teaser videos and press releases that made her debut feel like the sports equivalent of a Marvel movie trailer. The Chicago Sky's matchup against Brazil's national team at LSU was billed as a can't-miss event, a homecoming for Reese that would blend her college fan base with her new professional swagger. Surely the stands would be packed, the TV ratings would soar, and the internet would explode with highlights.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. I thought Angel Reese was responsible for elevating the WNBA dump. I thought Angel Reese was
Spoiler alert, none of that happened. The game was a ratings disaster of biblical proportions. The viewership numbers were so low they could have been mistaken for the attendance at a middle school talent show. Forget packed arenas. Reese was playing to a crowd that included a handful of janitors, a couple of stray pigeons, and a popcorn vendor who looked like he'd wandered in from a county fair. On television, the broadcast was a black hole, pulling in fewer viewers than a late-night infomercial for a knockoff air fryer. To put it in perspective, more people tuned in to watch a cable-access chess tournament in rural Nebraska than Reese's big moment.
Responsible for taking the dump and turning it into an unmonetizable turd. Now, to her credit, it is a nicely polished.
NASA's Mars rover footage had a bigger audience. A screensaver of a bouncing DVD logo would have generated more buzz. What went wrong? How did a player with such a massive online following, such relentless media hype, and such undeniable charisma end up performing to an audience that could have fit in a minivan? The answer lies in the disconnect between perception and reality, between branding and substance. Reese's camp had sold her as a superstar, but the court doesn't care about your follower count. Basketball isn't Instagram. You can't filter your way to relevance when the numbers tell a different story. The numbers don't lie. A preseason debacle. Let's talk stats, because in sports, numbers are the ultimate truth teller. The Chicago Sky's preseason game against Brazil was a ratings catastrophe. Entire continents showed less interest in the broadcast than they do in competitive paint-drying tournaments. The viewership was so dismal that network executives probably spent the evening Googling how to fake your own death while drowning their sorrows in lukewarm coffee. Fast forward to Reese's second preseason game, a matchup against the Minnesota Lynx, one of the WNBA's top teams. This was supposed to be her redemption arc, her chance to prove that the Brazil game was a fluke. Instead, it was a sequel nobody asked for. The stands were a sea of empty seats, a visual so haunting it could have doubled as the set for a post-apocalyptic horror flick. The camera panned across the arena, and it was like staring into the void, rows of chairs echoing with the silence of unmet expectations.
It almost looks appealing, almost. Of course, it's still not appealing enough to generate profit, but I guess the WNBA is taking.
At one point, a couple of birds flew overhead during warm-ups and promptly left, presumably because even they found the atmosphere too dull. The scoreboard seemed to sigh in boredom. The lone blogger live tweeting the game from a nearby Wendy's was the only sign of life, and even they seemed more interested in their Frosty than the action on the court. The TV ratings? Let's just say they made the Brazil game look like a cultural phenomenon by comparison. Reese's games couldn't even muster the viewership of a small town's annual tractor pull. At this point, A live stream of a potato rolling down a hill would have outperformed her numbers. Minor league curling was pulling better stats. Curling. To be fair, Reese wasn't terrible on the court. She put up respectable numbers. 15 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double that showed she could still play.
Of you who tell us, oh my God, what a big superstar. Oh my God, transcendent. Oh my goodness, generational. Oh my goodness, so on and so forth. You guys do all the talking.
Her new Reebok shoes sparkled under the arena lights, and her performance was solid enough to earn a highlight or two on a slow news day. But here's the brutal reality. In the modern sports landscape, performance alone doesn't cut it. The game has changed. It's not just about stats. It's about spectacle. It's about capturing eyeballs. The energy around Clark's game was electric, like a music festival and a sports event rolled into one. Fans packed the arena, screaming their lungs out. Social media erupted with every move she made. She hit a three-pointer, and it was like the internet collectively lost its mind. She sneezed, and it probably trended. ESPN had to scramble to open extra digital streams just to handle the traffic. Clark wasn't just playing basketball. She was orchestrating a cultural moment. Housewives, plumbers, NBA executives, and people who thought WNBA was a new Wi-Fi password, they all tuned in. Clark brought the juice, and the world showed up thirsty. What's the difference? Why was Clark's game a blockbuster while Reese's was a straight-to-DVD flop? It's not just about talent, though Clark's skill is undeniable. It's about authenticity, relatability, and the ability to connect with an audience. Clark doesn't need to proclaim herself a star. Her game does the talking. She doesn't rely on cryptic social media posts or manufactured drama to stay relevant. She steps onto the court, drops threes like it's her day job, because it is, and lets the results speak for themselves.
One of the biggest stories to come out of this game is you're playing one of the considered to be top 4 teams in the league, the Minnesota Lynx.
Her exhibition game wasn't just a win on the scoreboard. It was a masterclass in how to build a fan base without gimmicks. The delusion of deflection, Reese's reaction. You'd think a ratings disaster of this magnitude would prompt some soul-searching, a moment of humility where Reese and her team would step back, reassess, and regroup. But no, Reese's reaction was a masterclass in deflection, a whirlwind of excuses that could have powered a reality TV reunion special. Passive-aggressive Instagram stories, cryptic emojis, and enough attitude to fuel a season of Real Housewives. It was chaos, not strategy. The networks didn't promote the game enough, her fans cried. The time slot was bad, they whined, as if a 7:00 p.m. tip-off was the root cause of the apocalypse. The weather, the broadcasters, Mercury in retrograde, everything was to blame except the actual product on the court. This is where Reese's story takes a tragic turn. She had a chance to use this moment for growth, to acknowledge the gap between expectation and reality, and commit to bridging it. Instead, she doubled down on the hype, leaning into the narrative that she's a victim of circumstance rather than a player who failed to deliver. It's a classic case of mistaking attention for admiration. When you build your brand on being the loudest voice in the room, every critique feels like a personal attack. Every low rating feels like a conspiracy. Reese's camp spun the debacle as everyone else's fault, but the numbers don't lie. You can't blame the media when you're the one who set the expectations sky high and then didn't show up with the goods. The cultural context. Why hype isn't enough to understand why Reese's debut flopped so spectacularly. We need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
And nobody showed up to watch this game. All right? Again, 5 million Instagram followers.
We're living in an era where sports is as much about storytelling as it is about athleticism. Fans don't just want to watch a game, they want to be part of a narrative. They want heroes, villains, underdogs, and moments that make them feel something. Caitlin Clark gets this. Her game is a story of excellence, a rookie defying the odds and rewriting the record books. Every time she steps onto the court, it's like the next chapter in a saga that fans can't get enough of. She's not just a player.
To finally, end the argument. End the argument that there is any sort of other needle mover.
She's a phenomenon, a cultural touchstone who makes people care about women's basketball in a way they haven't in years. Reese, on the other hand, leaned too heavily on the villain arc without the substance to back it up. She branded herself as Caitlin Clark's rival, the gritty counterpart to Clark's Golden Girl shine. She fed into the comparison, nurturing a narrative that she was the second act in this WNBA drama. But here's the problem. You can't declare yourself a rival when the scoreboard, the fans, and the ratings have other plans. Clark's games are Coachella. Reese's are a quiet Tuesday morning at a community college gym. The contrast is stark, and it's not just about viewership. It's about impact. Clark is leading a movement, filling arenas and making basketball the headline. Reese is still trying to figure out how to make her sneakers squeak less loudly on the hardwood. This isn't to say Reese is without talent. Her college career at LSU was stellar, and her preseason stats show she can hold her own. But talent alone doesn't make you a star in today's world. You need to capture the zeitgeist, to create moments that resonate beyond the court. Clark does this effortlessly, turning every game into a must-watch event. Reese's moments, by contrast, feel like echoes, faint whispers of a spectacle that never quite materializes. She's got the glam, the walk, the big talk, but when the cameras roll, the audience is nowhere to be found. It's like throwing a party and realizing you forgot to send the invites. The social media par.
To Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. And again, the reason why we've got Haley Van